Welcome, weary wanderer, to boring history for sleep, the corner of the longhouse where storytellers whisper and embers glow low. Tuck the furs close around your shoulders, loosen the weight of daylight from your mind, and feel the steady hush of a northern night settle in. Here, in this gentle place of parchment-soft voices, you are always among friends. If these calm chronicles help your dreams take wing, leave a quiet sign in the ashes below. Tell us where in the wide world you are listening from, and what hour your clock strikes as you drift towards slumber. And, should the mood move you, brush the little runic glyph beneath the hearth. Some folk call it subscribe, so future fires stay bright, and the ale warm for every traveller who follows. Now hush any lingering thoughts of cliques and chores. The wind already hums outside, and our story is eager to cradle you. You wake in pre-dawn dimness, though wake is perhaps too lively a word. It is more that consciousness drifts up like smoke through roof slats, muffled and unhurried, while the world beyond your reindeer hide blanket remains half dream. Somewhere near the rafters, a soot-black raven clacks its beak, impatient for the faint promise of sun. A winter day on a Norse farmstead begins before it properly begins, because daylight is miserly in late January, stingy as a chieftain counting silver pennies. The sky will grant scarcely 6 hours of washed blue brightness, so every task must be coaxed into that slim window or bend to the lantern's flame. You draw a breath and taste pine smoke and damp wool. The longhouse smells exactly as it should, like yesterday's porridge, last summer's hay, and the iron tang of peat fire. Under the central smoke hole, the hearthstone smoulders, ringed by greenish soapstone pots. One still holds sour barley gruel, another cradles a strip of thawed cod, steeping in seawater to soften its briny heart. Salt fish is midnight tough these days, cured back in bright July, and now nearly as hard as a warrior's shield rim. Yet with enough boiling and patience, it will eventually shrug and fall apart in gentle flakes. You sit up, careful not to disturb the sleeping forms around you. Your wife, if you imagine one, lies to the right, her braid uncoiling across a straw pillow. Beyond her sprawl, 3 small children, hair like tussocks of dry grass, mouths ajar. They wear tunics so oversized that only the round cheeks confirm they are children, and not wandering dwarves. Farther along the raised plank bench, half under a bearskin, slumbers your aged mother, a woman who once sailed from Norway, but now rarely leaves the hearth's glow. She claims her joints protest sharper than any Frankish sword when frost sits heavy on the ground. Outside the warm circle of family, nearer the byre partition, 2 thralls curl together for heat. Bondservants captured in a coastal raid 4 summers ago, who now tend goats and chop wood for your household. Their snores are gentle, resigned to a life of labour that Norse law deems their lot, though even they can buy freedom if enough silver coins ever clink into their calloused palms. The first duty of the morning is lighting. Candles of tallow gutter low on the table, their stubby wicks drooping like weary fishermen's lines. But lamp oil is precious, rendered from seal fat hauled across brittle sea ice, so you let darkness linger. Instead, you shuffle across the packed earth floor toward the doorway, where a heavy wool curtain hangs in place of a door. Lifting it a crack, you slip outside into air thin as glass. Night has not fully surrendered. A powdered quilt of stars still stretches across the vault, yet a faint silver blush limbs the eastern ridge, where the sun will eventually drag itself above the horizon like a reluctant swimmer clambering from frigid water. Beyond your fence, frost-whitened fields roll toward black spruce forest. Stalk stumps protrude from the snow, ghosts of last year's barley, cut with billhooks carved from walrus bone. The crop was moderate, enough to fill 2 oak barrels in the pantry, each barrel maybe 40 bushels. In a kingdom of silver pennies, that grain is worth perhaps 6 ounces of weighed silver, or the labour of a skilled carpenter for half a year. One must measure value in units that warm the belly. You tramp toward the byre, boots squeaking on crusted snow. Beside you trudges a shaggy Icelandic sheepdog, tail curled tight like a fiddlehead fern. The dog's breath puffs in miniature clouds. His paws leave crisp prints that sparkle under the last stars. Inside the byre, goats shift and clack horns, disgruntled at your lateness. They require milking before dawn, lest their udders swell painfully. You whisper soft nonsense to calm them. Easy now, collar. Hold steady, sweet Jora, and set a carved horn cup beneath each teat. Warm milk steams in the cold air, carrying faint hints of hay and sweet clover remembered from distant June. You take a careful sip, comforting, mildly grassy, subtly salty. To your winter-starved tongue, it tastes almost like summer. From beyond the fence, a distant low bleat reminds you of cattle. The farm owns 3 cows, Hild, broad and brindled, Yngvi, her lanky yearling, and old Freydis, whose ribs show like the strakes of a longship. They shelter in a lean-to lined with seaweed for insulation. Hay is rationed strictly. A cow eats up to 20 pounds a day, and your loft stores only enough for 95 days from Yule to first budding. So you mete out fodder with the severity of a lawman reading fines. 3 armfuls morning, 3 at dusk, no more. Beside the barn door hang iron horseshoes, though you own no horse in winter. The smith up fjord forged those shoes as barter for cheese. Iron is dear in the north. 1 ship spike can fetch an entire fleece, so every horseshoe is repaired until it resembles lace. The Norse law speaker of the Althing once declared that any man who dulls another man's axe without leave must replace the iron or pay 3 ounces of hack silver. You glance at your own axe resting against the barn wall. Its edge shines blue under moonlight, sharp enough to slice a falling snowflake. Tasks completed, you return to the longhouse. By now, embers need coaxing. You kneel and breathe gently into ash, offering your warm exhale like a treaty. Sparks blossom, glowing orange threads in the grey dust. You add splinters of birch bark, then a thin spruce log. The fire sighs awake, crackling with slow contentment. A trickle of smoke curls up to the rafters, where it will eventually escape through the smoke hole and drift into the still dim sky, just in time to greet the first slip of dawn. Family stirs. Your eldest son, 8 winters old, though he insists he is nearly 9, sits up, rubbing eyes. He complains of cold toes. You hand him a scrap of woolen stocking to wrap around them, and tease that Thor himself goes barefoot when forging lightning. Therefore a brave boy might manage a few minutes of chill. Your son snorts but smiles, half convinced of his own valor. You are proud. Children who can laugh in deep winter are as valuable as any treasure chest. Sagas say a household without laughter is like a bow without string, present but powerless. Breakfast is barley porridge reheated with goat milk, thickened with dried bilberries harvested during the bright riot of August. You sprinkle a pinch of imported cinnamon, extravagant, purchased from a Baltic trader whose knuckles bore rings of carnelian, and the scent wafts through the longhouse like a whispered promise of warmer lands. Everyone eats slowly, savouring each spoonful as though it contains a spark of sunlight. You toast a sliver of rye bread near the flame, then drizzle it with honey from a skep your neighbour brought as tax for borrowing your ploughshare. Taxes on the farm are paid partly in kind, partly in labour, occasionally in song if you host the local Godi priest for winter feast. In your ledger, scrawled with charcoal on cured calfskin, honey equals half a milking goat in value, or 2 days of communal wall-building duty. After bowls are scraped clean, you allocate chores. The thralls carry slop to the pigs, who grunt within a stout wattle pen. Not your pigs, but your cousins', pastured here in exchange for a quarter of each litter. You and your son will mend fence rails, for last night's wind toppled 3 posts. Your wife spins wool by the hearth, twisting fibres into a yarn fine enough for trade. Each skein sells at summer market for perhaps 8 or pennies, enough to buy a small iron pot or a parcel of linen from distant Frisia. Meanwhile, your mother sorts dried herbs, angelica to ward off scurvy, yarrow for fevers, dried juniper berries to chew when coughs rattle lungs. Outside, winter sun finally heaves over the ridge, glowing milk pale as if shy of its own power. Light glints across untouched drifts, casting every hoofprint in gentle shadow. You heft fence rails, rough with splinters, and hammer them upright with a mallet cut from driftwood. The mallet head bears faint runic etchings, UNR, the initials of your father, engraved during the summer thing to secure his identity and trade. Property markings are vital. If 2 men quarrel over a sheep, the law hinges on such carvings. Should a mark be forged, punishment can be steep. 3 marks of silver, or outlawry for a season, meaning any man may slay the accused without blood debt. Outlawry in winter equals death, for who can survive without a hearth? You pause from hammering and flex fingers numb, despite fur mittens. Breath plumes white. Your son hands you wooden pegs fashioned yesterday, and you note with quiet satisfaction how neatly he trimmed them. Someday he will take over these fields. He quotes aloud a line from the poetic Edda: "Cattle die, kinsmen die, you too shall die." And you chuckle, less alarmed than another father might be. These grim verses are simply part of upbringing here, like lullabies elsewhere. Your son then recites the remainder, but one thing never dies: the fame of a noble deed, his small voice sincere. You ruffle his hat and return to work. Mid-morning brings a visit from your neighbour, Arnie the red-bearded. He rides a shaggy pony whose mane tangles with ice crystals. Arnie greets you with a curt nod, mindful of conserving warmth. He presents a leather pouch of dried fish skin as barter. His wife desires 2 skeins of your wife's wool, particularly the sea-green batch dyed with woad. You weigh the pouch in your palm, mentally calculating fairness. Fish skin can patch boots and adds chewiness to stew. Woad dye is tricky in winter, but you have enough. Deal struck, Arnie stays for a horn of mead by the hearth. Mead is weaker now than at harvest, but still sweet as caramel. You sip slowly, lapsing into easy silence broken only by crackle and the occasional drip of snowmelt from your cloak. Conversation gently drifts to gossip of the Althing last summer. How Viga Glum sued Olaf for encroaching on hay meadows. How Olaf countersued by claiming Viga Glum's son seduced his daughter. How the law speaker, wise as a snowy owl, fined each man a cow and demanded they share hay rights henceforth. Such stories are winter's currency. They reaffirm that even chieftains must bow to law, a comfort when storms batter roofs and goat pens alike. Arnie departs as noon hovers disguised in twilight grey. Your stomach rumbles. Lunch is leftover salt cod, warmed with turnip slices and a smear of butter. Butter shines golden in the bowl, a tiny captured sunrise. You count yourself fortunate. Butter is rare this late in season. Many households have scarcity and substitute tallow. While you eat, your wife hums a cradle song, melody looping like braided rope, and the children pile carved wooden animals near your feet: bears, boars, a tiny hammer-wielding Thor. Afternoon tasks pivot indoors because the temperature sinks sharply after midday. You stretch a goatskin on a pegged rack near the hearth, scraping away fat with a curved ulu blade. The skin will become mittens, perhaps to trade at the summer thing. Meanwhile, your wife combs wool with iron paddles, teeth snagging knots. Each sweep produces a puff of lanolin scent, reminiscent of sun-warmed pastures long buried beneath snow. She twists fibers into thread, rhythm hypnotic, hands moving in sure economy learned from her mother and grandmother before. Children practice runes on birch bark strips. They copy the younger Futhark alphabet, Fu Theath Er, with charcoal nibs dipped in goat milk ink. Literacy is not universal among farmers, yet you believe knowledge a sturdy shield. You recite aloud laws forbidding nighttime brawls within earshot of a church. Fines double in winter because travel is dangerous, and retrieving a corpse from a snowdrift distracts too many able bodies from critical chores. Late afternoon draws in like wool pulled over the head. Twilight in these latitudes can last 2 hours, a long exhale of lavender and blue. You stoke the hearth for evening cooking. Tonight's supper is barley bread baked on a hot stone, a pottage of split peas thickened with beef tallow, and a small marvel, dried apples rehydrated in honey water. Apples came by ship from King Ethelstan's England, traded for walrus ivory. Each slice, once leathery, now gleams like amber and tastes of distant orchards. Such rare sweets elevate spirits and chatter. While your wife cooks, you tend to tools. You hone your seax knife on a whetstone dabbed with goose grease, drawing blade against stone in slow, deliberate arcs. Metal sings a soft hiss, soothing in its precision. Edgecraft requires patient care. A dull weapon invites accidents ice cannot forgive. Near your feet the dog gnaws a scrap of reindeer hide, tail thumping lazily. Outside, the wind begins a low ululation, weaving between roof beams like a mournful flute. Supper bowls steam in everyone's hands. You bow head for brief grace, mumbling thanks to Thor for strength, to Freyr for harvest, to Frigg for family warmth. Religion here is practical. Gods are not remote, but neighbors who appreciate a well-cooked pea stew. After eating, you recount a fragment of saga to entertain the children. The voyage of Eric the Red, how his ship creaked across black seas toward Greenland, where icebergs glittered like trolls' teeth. You exaggerate the cold until your daughter giggles and hides her nose in her mittens. Night thickens. Lanterns are lit. Little clay cups filled with fish oil, wicks of twisted moss. Their glow pools gold on wooden walls, casting shadows of hams and garlic strings hung from rafters. You open a wooden chest and withdraw a board game, Nefertafel, the king's table. Carved walrus tusk pieces clack pleasantly as you arrange defenders around their monarch. Your eldest son challenges you. He has improved, predicting traps. You feign surprise when he corners your king beside the board's edge, triumphant grin glinting in lamplight. Soon, it is story hour. Neighbor children arrive, escorted by their mother, for communal tale-telling. They shed cloaks at the doorway, cheeks flushed crimson from wind. You sit cross-legged by the fire, clearing throat for low-paced narration. Tonight's tale is of the Lindisfarne raid 80 winters past, told not for glory, but caution. Pillaging monks might yield silver, yes, yet drown a soul in guilt heavier than iron. Moral tales are winter's compass. Voices hush, crackle of fire punctuates sentences, and faint howl of far wolves underscores tension without disturbing hush. By the time stories fade, the longhouse feels smaller, edges softened by flicker. Children nestle into blankets. Your wife combs her hair. Red strands glint like embers. She braids it loosely, tucks sprigs of dried lavender behind her ear. Lavender's smell drifts subtle between the tart goatskin and smoky hearth, a tiny poem of summer among prose of winter. You pour a final horn of mead, thin but deliciously mellow, spiced with bog myrtle. You sip, then pass it to your wife. She drinks and smiles, eyes as drowsy as the dog curled at her knees. Outside, the aurora unfurls ribbons of green across the black dome. Through the smoke hole, you watch them dance, silent serpents shimmering above. Norse legends call this Bifrost's reflection, the rainbow bridge glimpsed in winter night. Your son peers too, awe-dilating pupils. He asks if warriors' spirits walk that bridge tonight. You answer softly that perhaps they do, but spirits likely pause to admire the view like any sensible traveller. It is late, so late that time feels fluid, measured only by the steady drip of melting snow from eaves. You bank the fire, rake coals into a mound, Cover with ash to smother flame without extinguishing heat. The smell of charred pine mingles with wool blankets as everyone settles into sleeping alcoves. You lie back on straw mattress, heavy furs cocooning limbs. The dog circles twice, then collapses at your feet, sighing in dogged satisfaction. Heartbeats slow. You listen to the symphony of a Viking farmhouse at rest. Distant moo of a sleepless cow, pop of resin in glowing coals, faint whistle of wind through plank gaps, a child's tiny snore. These sounds layer like woven cloth, each thread adding warmth. Somewhere out on the fjord, ice scrapes against itself, a deep groan that reminds you of Earth's quiet breathing. Before eyelids fall, you cast thoughts toward tomorrow, tasks to mend sled runners, to check fish traps under ice, to carve new runic tally sticks for counting seed grain. Yet even these concerns feel gentle, padded by the certainty that generations have met the same challenges and prevailed. You are part of an unbroken chain of farmers who have milked goats under midnight skies, told sagas by lamplight, banked fires with careful hands, and carved laughter from the rock of winter. Sleep brushes your brow like the wing of a snow-white owl. Dreams creep in, warm visions of midsummer meadows buzzing with bees, of feast tables laden with roasted lamb and herb sauce, of far trading ships returning bowed but laden with silk. Every dream flickers beneath your ribs, fluttering gentle as candle flame. And if one dream drifts outward on a sigh, perhaps it journeys up through the smoke hole to twirl across the aurora, adding one more ripple to the northern lights. Rest now, traveller. The farm is safe, the goats content, the silver coins hidden in a birch bark box beneath your bed, the children fed and drowsy. Outside, night may be endless, but inside this longhouse warmth endures, hearthstones pulse with orange glow, and history itself wraps like a fur cloak around your shoulders. In this calm fold of time, you are sheltered, cherished, and free to drift wherever dreams may steer you, across starlit fjords, through fields of frost-jeweled barley, or into the quiet memory of a Viking dawn yet to come. Good night, and may the soft voice of history ferry you gently across the sea of sleep. You lie in that drowsy hush where sleep and waking mingle, but winter nights in the north always find a way to stretch themselves, to lengthen almost mischievously once lamps dim. So you float in the lamplight afterglow, not quite asleep, not exactly awake. Outside, the aurora's serpentine ribbons still roam the sky, slithering green to violet, but now and again a sliver of crimson flares, a rare shade ancient poets said foretold heroic deeds somewhere beyond the horizon. You idly hope the omen is gentle. A farmer's heroism need only be the patient rescue of a frost-stalled calf, not the clashing of blades. The dog twitches in its dreams, paws paddling through imagined drifts. Somewhere deeper in the byre, a goat sneezes. These are the tiny night notes that compose your world, half-muted echoes describing life more vividly than any saga scroll. They remind you that every breath of the farmstead sings in concert, a polyphony that lulls inhabitants into calm. Breath follows breath, the longhouse settles, rafters creak with slow timber sighs as their sap veins adjust to the cold. Your mind hovers on the memory of supper's dried apples. You recall how much they traded for last thing. 3 small sacks of those leathery slices were equivalent to a single linen undergown imported from Hedeby. Hedeby merchants claim their linen is spun so fine a yard of it can be pulled through a ring. You have never witnessed that trick, but you believe them. Merchants rarely lie outright, yet they embroider truth the way your wife embroiders tunic hems, threading brightness around ordinary cloth. Thought drifts to punishments and law. You revisit the Althing verdict where Olaf and Glum entangled their hay meadows. Fines, you know, carry weight measured in ounces of silver or in livestock. If a man steals another's haystack, impossible tales sometimes speak of midnight hay thieves, he must repay 3 stacks and publicly confess, else risk being stoned with frozen turf clods until sense returns. Such sternness feels natural in winter's severity. The land itself sets the tone, so law must echo it. Slowly, you sense a need to tend the embers, just a precaution, so you rise with the quiet of an owl. Embers gleam like garnets half buried in ash. With a split spruce sliver, you tease them into brief brightness, then lay a flat shingle across to prevent sparks springing free. The tiny flare silhouettes sleeping faces. Your youngest daughter's lips form a peaceful O. The thrall pair curl like parentheses protecting each other from drafts. You feel a pulse of gratitude as warm as the embers themselves, and gratitude is the truest night blanket. You return to your straw mattress, but do not lie down yet. Instead, you open the chest at your feet, its lid creaking soft as sleet on moss. Inside rests an oiled leather sachet of letters. Yes, letters, written in uneven Latin by a Frankish monk you once ransomed from a coastal raid. Ransom was moderate by monastery standards, a bolt of scarlet wool, and a single silver ring set with amber. In exchange, the monk gifted you 8 sheets of vellum lined with tales of far cathedrals and vineyards that drip purple as spilled ink. You cannot read Latin unaided, but the very existence of the characters fascinates you. Their curves resemble serpents, loops like fjord eddies, strokes like spearheads. Sometimes you trace them with a fingertip, admiring the artistry of ideas frozen onto skin of calf. Tonight, you remove one vellum sheet, holding it near the low glow. You see dim strokes, dominus, gratia, lumine, words whose sounds you once learned to pronounce, though the meanings waver like heat haze. Your wife told you once that these letters look like migrating geese in row. You smile at the thought. Then you tuck the sheet away. Vellum is too precious to smudge with soot. A sudden gust rattles wallboards. You step to the entry curtain and lift its edge. Icy wind knifes in, carrying crystalline flakes that swirl in hesitant spirals before sinking to the packed earth. The wind also brings the sea's faint roar, though you live inland by several leagues. Winter's stillness lets sound travel like gossip. You picture waves battering basalt cliffs, sending foam aloft to freeze in the air. Somewhere out there, seal hunters may still be dragging carcasses to sleds by lamplight, because tides wait for no sun. Closing the curtain, you latch a wooden peg through its ring. Simple technology, yet it bars wind as sure as a castle gate. A castle. You chuckle at the fancy. The nearest stone fortification sits across the North Sea in York, where Anglo-Saxon earls debate tolls and the cost of cider. Stone walls impress traders, but you suspect their hearths draw draughts fierce enough to blow out a saga poet's beard. You lie back, head sinking into a deerskin stuffed pillow. Sleep hovers, but mind still meanders through practicalities. Tomorrow's sled runners scraped with reindeer shank bones, clooty dumplings to be boiled for Candlemas, though Christian feasts remain a curiosity here. The need to shave curls of birch bark for kindling, repairs to a cracked hand-quern upper stone, essential for grinding barley. If you cannot mend it with lead and lashing, you might trade a spare goat pelt to the itinerant potter for a replacement stone, imported from quarries near Trondheim. Every thought lands softly, allowed to linger without urgency. At last, slumber claims you, but of course dreams are not absent. They arrive like silent skalds. The first dream, you tread a meadow afloat in summer's perfume. Bees hum in hexagonal drifts, and your deceased father appears, sitting on an overturned barrel tuning a harp. He plucks a single note that resonates like warm iron struck lightly, gong-like yet soft, and you know the barrel hides a store of bright apples, untouched by worms. The second dream, you row a gnar up a silver river, the water so smooth that stars reflect perfectly, so the sky seems below you, and the keel glides between galaxies. Both dreams abandon you gently when dawn, a dawn disguised as grey twilight, edges around the eaves. A rooster crows, though you have no rooster. Perhaps the neighbour's bird carried on wind. You wake fully, blinking at gloom. Inside the longhouse, it feels scarcely brighter than when you closed your eyes. Winter sun needs encouragement, but your schedule does not. Time to rise. You slip from bed, stretch arms overhead, joints popping like fir cones in a fire. You slide feet into sealskin shoes, still damp but pliable, and glance about. Others shift, but none stand. Fine. You will fetch water first. Outside, snow whispers beneath wooden soles. Sky has lightened to the colour of tarnished pewter. Sunrise remains hidden behind jagged peaks, but horizon blushes faint apricot. You trudge toward the well, a stone-lined shaft capped by timber. The bucket rope, twisted horsehair, is stiff with frost. You drop bucket. Distant splash echoes. Hauling water feels heavier than yesterday. Arms protest under layers of wool. This water is treasure. You will heat it for washing wooden bowls, mixing gruel, shaving soot from faces. On the way back, you pause by the smithy lean-to. Nobody's forging in winter. They save bellows leather from cracking, but nails and rivets inside call to you. You open the door, inhale the ghost of burnt charcoal. On a shelf rests a bar of wrought iron, token thin, hammered last autumn. Each bar 8 spans long, costs roughly half the price of a healthy ewe, but you keep it for emergencies. Broken ploughshares, snapped hinges, spear tip for defense against possible raiders from the next fjord. Your region is mostly peaceful. Trading links tie villages closer than warfare. Yet memory holds stories of surprise torch-bearing bands who plunder haylofts in late February when hunger gnaws. You maintain walls and iron because caution is the cheapest insurance. Returning to the longhouse, you brush snow from shoulders. The door curtain sways warm air outward, embracing you like breath. Inside, your wife has risen. She sprinkles crushed eggshell into the cookpot. Yes, eggshell. It clarifies broth by catching impurities, leaving liquid clear and tasting faintly of calcium. You remark that you must visit the henhouse later. She reminds you hens lay rarely in deep winter, a gift not to expect daily. She pours water you fetched into a kettle, then drops in a slab of frozen kale stems saved from autumn. With barley grains, the stew will sustain bodies for fence mending. Children yawn themselves awake. The eldest recounts a dream of flying across a city of glass towers, an image so fantastical that even sagas lack it. You nod sagely and tell him perhaps the dream glimpsed the glass halls of the future, though skalds might call them palaces of ice. He grins, comforted that dreams hold equal rank to daylight tasks. Breakfast eaten, you and the thralls stride toward the forest's edge to fell a small spruce dead from bark beetles. Dead standing wood dries quickly, burning hot and clean. You carry your iron axe, but first you invoke a quick blessing to the land vetir, spirits said to guard each plot. You tap the tree trunk lightly 3 times, so folklore says the resident sprite can scurry out before steel bites. Then you swing. Thunk echoes through silent timber as chips fly, pale crescents that land in the snow like feathers. Thunk, thunk, rhythm steady, body warming beneath layers. Each swing shakes frost from boughs overhead. Crystalline showers dust your fur cloak. Deep forest hush swallows sound, except the blade's report. This hush comforts, because it mirrors the hush inside your mind while laboring, pure, uncomplicated focus. The tree falls in a slow, dignified lean, then crashes with a sigh, branches rustling final complaint. Your thralls, Dagny the quick-smiled and Hawk the stoic, lop branches, stack them like giant fan ribs for later kindling. You saw the trunk into lengths, each roughly the span of your arm. 2 lengths will become sled runners once shaved. The others become hearth fuel, each log a promise of tomorrow's warmth. While you toil, you discuss with Hawk the price of sealskins at the coming spring market. Last year, 10 fine skins fetched a weight of silver equal to a cow and calf. This year, rumour says, merchants from Ribe anticipate war elsewhere and need ship tar. Sealskins may tumble in price. You weigh possibilities silently. If sealskins drop, goat cheese may rise. Hard cheese travels well, and there was talk of a monastery famine along the Irish coast. Even in the forest, world news sneaks between branches. Logs loaded onto a hand sled, you return, knees stiff. The sledge runners rasp over snow. At the farmyard gate, your wife greets you with a mug of hot mead laced with fennel seed. Steam curls friendly into your beard. The children, tiny mittens flapping like gull wings, run to inspect your haul. You present them with small branch pieces to carve toys later. Generosity costs nothing and yields much delight. Noon arrives disguised again as grey drizzle of light. You and Dagny carry sled runners to the workshop alcove. There, on a workbench stained with resin, you shave each plank using a draw knife of bone-handled iron. Shavings peel like butter curls, releasing spruce aroma reminiscent of long-distant Christmas. The runner must curve at front to glide. For this, you soak its nose over gentle steam, so wood bends rather than cracks. You clamp it with wooden pegs and rope, leave to dry. Such craft takes patience measured in days, not hours. Beside you, Hauk sharpens an awl on basalt stone. He hums, voice deep, vibrating boards. You ask about his homeland across the North Sea. He tells of a village by a tidal island, where fishermen dry herring on racks tall as watchtowers. He misses the gull screech. Here only ravens rule sky. You nod sympathetically, though inside you muse that ravens are tidier neighbours than gulls. You promise him a portion of next summer's herring catch if the shoals cooperate. His eyes flicker appreciation. Afternoon edges toward dusk earlier than you wish. There is still work. Manure must be spread on the rye field, so spring melt carries nutrients down. You hitch the lone pony to a small sledge laden with straw-mixed dung. The pony huffs visible breath. You guide it along furrows, pitchforking black clumps in slow arcs, each thud muffled by snow. Manure steams when landing, the smell potent but rich. You think of it as stored sunlight, yesterday's grass transmuted into tomorrow's grain. Your eldest son walks behind scattering finer clods, learning stewardship intimately. Twilight quickly dims. You finish sledding, lead pony to trough where water-crusted slush floats. You break ice with a mallet. Pony drinks gratefully. Then you deliver remaining logs to the woodpile outside the longhouse door, stacking them by size. 3 logs will burn tonight, though you count 8 heartbeats of frost between their bark, where moisture may still hide. Inside, the longhouse glows again. Your wife has boiled kale barley stew thick enough to stand spoon upright. She added a marrow bone saved since butchering day. The broth is buttery, nourishing. While family eats, you entertain them with news of the forest spirits, how you tapped thrice so they may exit, how one might follow you home riding on wood shavings. Your youngest eyes widen. You reassure them the spirit means no harm, maybe watches over kindling to ensure it lights easily. They relax, slurping stew with gusto. After bowls empty, you wipe spoons clean with stale bread to waste nothing. Your mother rises from her seat, joints cracking like dry twigs, and recites a prayer both pre-Christian and Christian. Hedging bets must amuse the gods. She asks Frigg for household harmony, Christ for mercy, Thor for weather mild enough to spare ewes in lambing season. Everyone nods into their cups, spiritual pluralism, as natural as mixing wool colours. With bellies warm, chores for evening lighter, you open the woven wicker game basket. Tonight, it is not Hnefatafel, but Cub, the throwing game of wooden blocks. However, outdoor snow drifts hinder. You adapt by setting up miniature blocks atop the long bench. Each child flicks small carved bone pegs at the blocks, trying not to overshoot into the cookpot. The game devolves into giggles. You feign consternation when a peg splashes stew pots. Laughter bounces off beams like migrating swallows returning early. After games, each family member chooses a craft to while away hours. Your wife settles at her warp-weighted loom set against the wall. Wooden weights dangle like plumb bobs, tugging warp taut. She passes the shuttle with unhurried grace, creating weft patterns of sea green and undyed cream. Loom music is gentle thunk-tug shush of shuttle sliding. She plans to trade the finished bolt for beeswax candles come spring. Beeswax burns cleaner than tallow and scents air like summer orchard. You, meanwhile, carve a spoon blank from rowan wood. Spoon carving is meditative. You mark bowl outline with coal, then use a crooked knife, blade hooked like a gull beak, to hollow shape. The wood's sweetness fills nostrils. Rowan smells faintly of almonds. You remove slivers thin as parsnip peel, turning wrist precisely. Across the hearth, Hauk plets strips of rawhide into a dog leash, durable enough to restrain even an unruly boar. Dagny cleans hand-quern grooves with a linen rag dipped in vinegar. Grit squeaks, but stones look renewed. Hours ebb like sand through fingers. You look up. Children slump, eyes drooping. Bedtime. They brush crumbs from tunics, splash faces with cool water, soap rarely used midwinter, soap waste heat, then scamper to the family bed nook. Before lying down, each child marks a cross on the beam overhead, as you taught them last winter. A cross is not solely Christian, but a rune of intersection, signifying safety where paths meet. Tradition may mesh, comfort is all. The thralls bank the fire under your supervision. They lay a large birch log split only once, so it will smoulder until dawn. Birch bark rich in resin catches flames quickly. Still you douse outside edges with water, so it does not flare bright enough to disturb sleep. You sprinkle ash lightly atop to moderate burn. The longhouse cools, but not harshly. Thick beams hold heat. You extinguish lanterns save one by the entry. Its moss wick burns low, but bright enough to guide any midnight visitor, human or goat, without missteps. Lantern light softens edges. Lines fuzz. The world blurs pleasantly. You love this liminal glow. Reality drifts into dreamscape. Finally, you lie down again, this time truly weary. The dog circles beside your knees, grumbles, then stills. You feel warmth radiate from its body like a living hot stone. You pull fur blankets to chin, inhale aromas, old smoke, pine resin, faint goat musk, lavender sprig near pillow. These scents compose a private lullaby. Breath slows. You feel pulse behind eyelids, feel heart echo log crackles. Thoughts drift. You picture a procession of runes marching across inside of lids. Thorn, U, R, Thor, Protector, F, A, Fehu, Cattle, Wealth. You review them lazily, awarding each rune a story until letters drift apart like snowflakes. Sleep approaches wearing rabbit fur boots so soft you scarcely hear its steps. But just before you cross the threshold, one dry fact leaps to mind. Barley prices last year peaked at 9 eur per volume barrel because storms ruined harvest along Danish coast, causing scarcity. Such practical detail, bizarre though it seems, lulls you further. Knowledge of supply and demand feels as secure as locked doors. With that final reassuring statistic, you surrender to slumber's hush. Hours pass unknown. Outside, moon wheels across sky like a polished shield rim. Frost crystals thicken on cottage eaves, their edges serrated and glittering. Somewhere in distant dark, a lonely wolf calls, long flute-low note sliding downward, and the pony in its shelter stamps once, but no other beast stirs. Inside, dreamland flows onward. You dream of standing upon a promontory overlooking endless pines, each tree a candle cast in silver moonlight. Wind whistles between their trunks, whispering fragments of languages older than Havamal. You answer in runes that sprout as glowing vines from your fingertips, curling into winter air. The vines slither skyward, tangling with auroral ribbons until runes and northern lights braid into shining ropes. You anchor one rope around your waist and lean back, letting the woven wonder carry you upward, higher, weightless, until farmstead recedes to a pinpoint ember on snow canvas. You sense not fear, but profound quiet, like holding your breath beneath still water, and in that quiet you recognize the hum of cosmic loom weaving seasons, births, stories, and even simple spoons into an endless tapestry far vaster than any mortal saga. The tapestry gleams, each thread shimmering with potential futures, and you realize comfort. Nothing that happens within one longhouse ever falls truly lost. It simply becomes a stitch in that boundless cloth. When dawn stirs once more, you surface with slow breaths, eyes open, morning gloom again. But something inside beams warm like buried ember. The dream's lesson that daily chores are cosmic stitches. You rise lighter, ready to hem the day. First act, slip quietly past sleepers to relieve yourself at the midden pit. Crisp air jolts senses awake. Returning, you stoke embers, set kettle of snow crust to melt. Water hisses, steam plumes. You grind handful of barley with repaired quern. Stones whisper. You add meal to water, stir with carved rowan spoon, the one just finished and oiled. Porridge will please family when they rise. As you stir, you note spoon's bowl shape, proud. Craft yields tangible joy. Wooden surface bears faint red ribboning from rowan heartwood, nature's art. You idly hum stanza from an old cradle song. Rowan red around the door, keep the wandering witch no more. Superstition, perhaps, yet rowan spoons may protect stew from ill wishes. An extra sweetness of mind. Family wakes to porridge scent. They eat quietly, still half dreaming. After bowls, your wife unwraps a narrow clay tablet containing beeswax. She intends to scratch out this week's ration ledger. She records goat milk yield, 4 cups yesterday. Barley remaining, 2 eighth-bushel sacks. Salt fish count, 30 flat pieces. And candle stubs, 7. Her script is pictographic rather than runic. Little goat shapes, fish tails, tally marks. But accuracy matters. Miscount means hunger later. While she writes, you tie on snowshoes shaped like tennis rackets of willow hoops, laced with rawhide. Snow stands deep beyond fence. You must check fox traps along tree line. You stride atop drifts almost gracefully, despite squeak with each step. Air tingles with minus temperatures, but sky glimpses pale blue. Maybe sun dares show. Among spruce, you spot first trap. A bent sapling snare triggered but nothing inside, only scattered prints. Fox cunning again. At second trap, success. A silver-grey vixen lies still, eyes closed as though dozing. You kneel, offer quiet apology. Fur and meat will not be wasted. Fox pelts fetch a fair price, perhaps 4 each, valued by Frankish hatmakers. You secure carcass to pack, reset snare. While tightening cord, you consider wolf populations. Law codes allow killing wolves without penalty. Each pelt turned into the king's representative earns bounties of 2 Yet wolves venture seldom this far inland. They prefer reindeer calves near coast. Still, you keep spear handy. On return hike, you pass birch stands shimmering white. You pause to cut slender branch. Its sap frozen, but bark contains betulin, flammable. You will slice it into curls for tinder. Back home, dog greets you, tail beating a frenzy. You toss it a gnawed fox leg. Dog trots away rejoicing. Your wife tacks finished weaving to frame for inspection. Fabric glows sea green against dark logs, reminding everyone of fjord waters under midsummer sun. Children admire, even thralls nod. She smiles shyly. Praise warms where fire cannot reach. Mid-morning brings visitor. Einar the tax collector, cloaked in lambskin, cheeks wind-burned. He bears a wax-sealed scroll listing every household's dues to the Jarl. He requests half measure of butter, or lacking that, equivalent in dried fish. Butter scarce. You offer dried cod. He weighs strips in palm, judges them fair. In return, He issues stamped token proving payment, a small wooden disc carved with Jarl's rune. You store token in chest. It may protect you from further levies this quarter. Einar stays for warm ale. Taxes soften easier with hospitality. He relays gossip. Jarl's son will marry daughter of distant chieftain come spring. Feast rumoured to last 7 nights, requiring enormous honey stores. Good for beekeepers. He also says plague cough has struck settlements nearer coast. Black phlegm, rapid fevers. You file mental note. Limit coastal contact until frost lifts. Plague seldom crosses frozen hills, but caution again, cheap insurance. Afternoon again, fleeting. You and eldest son decide to hollow out an ice pit for storing future fishing haul. Frozen fish keep well embedded in snow, but ice pit ensures foxes cannot paw them. You carve blocky steps, chip sides flat, line bottom with spruce boughs. While chiseling, you teach son the principle of conduction. Ice steals heat fastest from surfaces touching it directly. Spruce boughs delay melting, preserve fish longer. He nods, absorbing physics masked as folk wisdom. Work halts when daylight fails. You trudge back, cheeks numb, yet heart full. Longhouse glows inviting, smells of something new, anise perhaps. Your wife coaxed thrall Dagny to brew herbal cordial to fight coughs. It bubbles in iron cauldron, star-shaped seeds floating. She ladles you taste. Warmth slides down throat like silk. Night routines return. Loom clacks, fire crackles. Children practice flute carved from goose quill. Its notes soft, tinny, unobtrusive. You polish spearhead with sand-infused cloth. Maintain edge though seldom used. Spears double as walking sticks on icy paths. You recount to children punitive law from Gulathing. Man caught cheating at dice owes 60 pennies and stands stocks 2 hours. Children gasp. You note severity fosters honesty. They vow never cheat board games. Neighbour Arnie visits again, bearing surprise. A parchment scrap containing news from overseas merchants. Rumour of a new coin minted by King of England. Pure silver, weight standardized. If rumour true, North traders may adopt coinage replacing hack silver bits. Transactions simpler. You and Arnie discuss potential outcomes. Tax collectors might weigh coins instead of cut strips. Thieves may target coin pouches. But forging coins carries death penalty. Risk high. Arnie leaves with half-wheel of cheese. He promises to share any new intel come thaw. After neighbour departs, family engages in singing round. You choose a lullaby older than runes, melody descending gently like snowflakes, lyric telling of a willow cradle rocking by fjord tide. Voices overlap, minor harmonies weaving comfort. Dog lifts head, ears perk, then sinks into deeper sleep. Even thralls join soft chorus. Here, hierarchy forgets itself in music. Song fades, and you pull out saga scroll, copied on birch bark by local skald, detailing exploits of Cormac the Skald and his faithful hound Scully. You read slowly, voice thick but soothing. Children's eyelids droop, even adults feel tug. When you reach heroic dog's courageous leap across burning bridge, you gently lower voice to whisper, letting tension resolve into dog's safe return. No jarring endings tonight. Every arc must land like feather. Bedtime again, but before lying down, you open longhouse door quietly. Night outside luminous. Full moon stands like silver coin lodged in velvet. Snow surfaces glitter as if sprinkled with crushed diamonds. You step out carrying wooden pail, scoop fresh snow for morning water. You pause, listen. Silence so deep you hear heartbeat in ears. You recall poem fragment. Silence is the skin of gods. Indeed, this hush feels divine. You look up. Aurora absent tonight. Stars crisp instead. Constellations sharp needles. You identify Thor's goat, modern capella, guarding sky, glimmering pale amber. Mariners believe this star guides them home. You nod thanks, then step back inside. You latch door, bank fire. Everyone rests. You slip under furs, mind humming but gentle. Sleep arrives quickly yet again, yet as you drift you think on tomorrow's tasks. Quern grinding, sled to mend, bread to bake, woodpile to cover. But each thought ends in a soft mental exhale. You have become adept at letting worries melt like snowflakes on warm sled runner. Dream again. This time you roam a library carved into glacier ice. Corridors shiver blue. Shelves line with frozen scrolls. You slide one free. Inside, letters glow, describing everything that will happen to your lineage for 10 generations. You read first line only. It says your great-great-granddaughter will brew ale so delicious kings will bow. Content, you replace scroll. Not every secret must be known. You wake refreshed at some hour hidden beneath night's blanket. Maybe stars still reign. Maybe dawn only whispers far away. Doesn't matter. In longhouse hush, you turn to wife's sleeping form, hair spilled like copper river across pillow. You marvel at resilience shared by all here, thralls who once fled burning villages, children ready to laugh despite cold, elders whose bones recall warmer shores. You feel spark inside chest, a quiet pride not thunderous, but firm as old oak root. You exhale and embrace sleep one final time, secure within longhouse womb, in world where history marches slow, each step cushioned by straw and snow, each moment of survival and small joy, weaving itself into the broader saga of humankind. And even as winter persists, you know spring will eventually ride over mountains on the back of a swan-white cloud, scattering seeds and song. Until then, you guard the hearth, carve spoons, honor spirits, feed family, and dream under auroral quilts. History, after all, is only life practiced with patience. Good night once more, traveller. May frost sing you lullabies, may embers glow in your memory, and may dawn take its sweet time, for you have earned every extra heartbeat of rest. A faint scritching sound nudges you awake. One of the thralls is already up, shaving thin slivers of dry pine with his knife, coaxing a breakfast spark from the banked embers. You glimpse lamplight glimmering in the cup of his palm as he shields the wick from draughts, the flame no larger than a glowworm, yet bright enough to gild his cheekbones the colour of polished copper. His breath drifts in slow plumes, and for a moment you lie still, simply watching the choreography of dawn chores that happens whether you observe it or not, as inevitable as the turning of the seasons inscribed on the back of every runestone. You rise quietly, shoulders crackling beneath layers of linen, wool, and deerskin. Your joints announce the cold with little groans, but you smile through them. In a land where the ground itself groans each night beneath its crust of ice, creaky bones feel almost like camaraderie. You tug on a pair of knitted mittens, thumbs separate, fingertips blunt, and notice the mended patches on the palms. Your mother darned them last winter, using weft threads pulled from a frayed cloak. Nothing here truly dies, it only changes assignment. A lingering hush still coats the longhouse, broken only by the soft scuff of the thrall's boots on packed earth, and the tiniest snap as a birch sliver catches. Soon, however, the hearth flames shrug awake, golden tongues licking sap from pine knots, and the hush thins. Orange light fans outward, licking the edges of crates and stools, turning the hanging garlic into glowing pearls. You inhale the familiar medley: peat smoke, hay dust, faint sourness of rye dough proving in a covered bowl, and the copper-sweet tang of yesterday's blood sausage drying on a rack overhead. Outside, the sky remains a deep pewter grey. Dawn here is more a rumour than a spectacle, but you sense that first shy radiance somewhere just beyond the tree line. You step out for firewood. The air nips, sharp enough to bring tears, but inside that sting you can taste the clean iron purity of sub-freezing air, tinged with a faint ozone note where the aurora lingered unseen. Beneath your boots, the hard crust squeaks like fresh-washed linen. Every crunch feels satisfying, like writing your name in untouched parchment. You cross to the woodpile where last night's freshly split logs await. The ends show pale yellow rings, still bright with sap, and the scent of cut spruce hangs sweet as resinous incense. You cradle 2 hefty logs against your chest, their frost-chilled bark biting at the fabric of your tunic. As you turn back, you pause, surveying the silent farmyard. Wisps of breath trail upward from the byre roof vent, 3 cows exhaling together inside, and from a far corner you catch the flicker of a small oil lamp. Your wife has slipped out to milk the goats early, humming a tune that drifts toward you on the frozen air like a thread of spun glass. Back inside, fire roars a little louder, and the drone of morning gradually thickens. A ladle knocks against iron, a baby coughs, the dog flaps its ears and thumps its tail. Soon steam billows from a cauldron where water, barley meal, and a pinch of salt swirl together. You stir, tracing lazy figure-8s with the long-handled spoon, watching the grains dance, swell, and soften. Barley costs only 1/3 the price of wheat in these parts, and though it clings stubbornly to the teeth, it warms the belly like a quiet blessing. Your eldest daughter joins you, still wrapped in a sheepskin, hair a wild halo of straw. She sets a little pot of honey near the hearth, careful not to scorch it, and says that 1 comb of the hive remains untouched in the attic, enough to sweeten morning meals for perhaps a fortnight. You nod, calculating silently. A single half-comb could fetch 2 silver pennies at the spring market, but here, at this breakfast table, it's worth far more than any coin. You dip the wooden ladle and drizzle a ribbon of honey into the porridge, thin at first, then thicker as it warms, watching it vanish beneath bubbles like a golden serpent diving through hot springs. Children gather, still bleary-eyed, and each receives a bowl. They cup it with mittened hands, spooning the thick mixture slowly, savouring every caramel note. The thralls accept their share last. Norse etiquette isn't blind to rank, yet fairness persists. Nobody leaves the bench hungry. As you eat, your wife recounts a dream she had, a white bear wandering into the yard, not to threaten, but to nap in the hay. Your mother clicks her tongue, recalling how white bears in Sami folklore signify hidden generosity. She suggests leaving a morsel of butter near the threshold tonight. Butter. The children chuckle, for there is none to spare, yet the idea delights. A solemn butter offering to an invisible dream creature tickles the imagination. Breakfast ends, and bowls are rinsed with hot snowmelt. Water is scarce in midwinter. Every droplet demands carrying, melting, warming, cooling. You remind the children, gently but firmly, why a careless spill is an insult to the mountain spirits who shepherd the water through frozen streams. They nod, wiping lips, and soon scatter to their tasks. 1 child fetches kindling, another sweeps the corridor where stray hay has escaped. Your son shoulders a small leather quiver, preparing to practice archery at stump targets beyond the goat pen. Dexterity now, accuracy later, glory never. He'll loose arrows until fingertips sting, then return satisfied by the steady hum of repetition. You set out for the shed where sled runners, shaped yesterday, rest in their clamps. Overnight, the steam-bent noses have cooled into proper swoops, graceful as seal flippers. You run a palm along their grain, supple yet rigid, no cracks. Satisfied, you plane the undersides, coaxing shavings that curl like peeled parchment. Each curlicue falls lightly, making a faint shush as it lands on already thick drifts of wood curled beneath the bench. The scent, raw spruce mingled with faint sea salt from your gloves, seeps into the shed until it feels like spring in there. Mid-morning. The sun finally appears, a pale coin hung low in the south. Its light, though meagre, sparks life. Chickens scratch in their straw-padded coop. 2 eggs lie nestled, small miracles against all seasonal odds. Your wife gathers them, her breath visible, and strokes each eggshell with mittened thumb in quiet gratitude before sliding them into her apron pocket. 2 eggs. The difference between plain barley gruel tomorrow and barley egg custard, a luxury. You hear her humming again, a soft tune older than any saga, something about mistletoe and moonlit lakes. You decide to work leather next. Last summer's reindeer hide, tanned with ground willow bark, hangs supple on a beam. You lay it across a low table, knife in hand, plotting shapes to cut. New moccasins for the thrall Hawk. His current pair shows daylight where soles should be, and a sheath for the crooked knife. You trace outlines with chalk, then score the hide, blade whispering through the suede. Each strip curls away, revealing smooth underside the color of warm sand. While you stitch, you recall a royal decree you once overheard in Kaupang. Any merchant found trimming weight from his coin scales would forfeit his vessel and its cargo, plus his right to trade for 5 years. Severe, but lighter than the older law. Loss of tongue and both ears. Still, trust and weight go hand in hand in marketplaces. You glance at your own set of scales, tiny copper pans, a set of bronze weights etched with runes of authenticity, and feel a quiet pride in their flawless balance. They have kept you honest, and honesty has kept you fed. Around noon, your neighbor Arnie returns, pony stamping. He brings a joint of smoked lamb, blackened rind crackling with salt crystals. He traded 4 skeins of your wife's sea-green wool for this at the fjord last night. Said the fisherman's wife near the docks, claimed priests from Bremen crave coloured cloth for altar frontals. In exchange, she gifted the lamb, fired in alder smoke for 2 days. The aroma, even wrapped in sealskin, is enough to send everyone's stomach rumbling. You slice off thin strips, pass them around. The meat is salty, slightly gamey, still whispering embers. Children devour it like stolen treasure. Arnie lingers for news. He says a coastal woman in childbirth lost her life last week, midwife too late through snow. You and your wife exchange glances, vows each to check on neighbor expectant mothers after the next thaw. Community weaves survival. Arnie also tells of 2 men fined at the winter thing for selling rancid butter. Each must now supply a whole ton of fresh butter come summer or face outlawry. Where they'll find that much butter, none can guess, but law is law, and winter nights echo with the retold folly of dishonest tradesmen. Afternoon dims again, short day nearly spent. You gather your son and thrall Dagny for a trek to the frozen inlet where fish traps sit under the ice. You strap on snowshoes, shoulders braced against wind that smells faintly of sea salt, though the shore lies miles away. Overhead, clouds churn like grey fleece. Now and again, a weak sunbeam needles through, glinting off crystals, so the air itself appears draped in shining nets. The inlet is silent, locked under a lid of ice a handspan thick. At the hole you cut 2 days prior, a wooden cover lies snow-dusted. You lift it, revealing water dark as pitch. A rope line disappears into its depths. Dagny hauls it slowly, hands gloved in seal hide. The trap emerges, a willow-woven basket thrumming with movement. Inside, 3 fat Arctic char shimmer, sides mottled silver rose, scales flickering rainbow in the pewter light. Each char weighs perhaps a 1/4 pound, and though their eyes reflect a primal fear, their flesh represents calories no farmer ignores. You dispatch the fish quickly with the blunt end of a haft, no needless suffering, and slide them into a leather pack stuffed with snow to keep them chill. You reset the trap, adding a sliver of lamb fat as lure, then cover the hole. Already the wound in the ice steams faintly, as though eager to heal. Nature here thinks in silences, in returning every scratch to smoothness. During the trudge home, you talk with your son about mortality rates among fish in salted barrels, how if the brine ratio dips below 1 part salt to 6 parts water, spoilage spreads like a rumor. He listens wide-eyed, repeating the numbers until they stick. This is math class, woodshed style, counts of grains, weights of coins, ratios of salt. Practical sums they will carry the rest of their lives. Back at the longhouse, dusk asserts itself, bold and blue. The thralls lug an armful of alder branches inside. Alder pops merrily when burned, giving a spicy scent. You split the char open, gutting swiftly. The liver you pass to your daughter, who salts it and skewers it on a green willow twig, to roast as the fire slows later. Fish flesh you lay on a wooden slab beside the hearth, sprinkled with ground angelica seed and a drizzle of the last spoonful of honey. It will roast in its own fat, sizzling gently. Inside 5 minutes, the air turns divine. The evening meal, char, thin barley cakes baked on slate, a pot of turnips mashed with butter shards, and the smoked lamb slices now warmed near the coals. Everyone eats heartily, faces flushed in the fire glow. Even thralls receive second helpings. Labourers fed well work well, and your household runs on the principle that dignity breeds loyalty. As you chew, you describe to the children the origins of the char's colour, how crustaceans in glacier meltwater tint their flesh, and the little ones ooh and ah, mouths full. Meal concluded, bowls licked clean, you invite the family to a brief candle making. Wick hemp was soaking in lye water overnight. Now the fibres lie soft as seaweed, ready to twist. You carve a shallow bowl of tallow from the pot, warm it, and everyone dips thin lengths of twisted hemp, layer by layer. Candle making is patient craft. Dip, cool, dip again. The children's faces glow with concentration, each candle's radius widening like tree rings marking age. By session's end, 7 stubby tapers line a board. They smell faintly of goat fat and juniper, and though they will sputter if jostled, they will transform endless dark into golden hush. Later, neighbour children arrive with their mother, bringing a story scroll. Tonight's reading is the saga of Halfdan the Black, copied by a monastery scribe and purchased in exchange for dried cod and a small garnet. You unroll the vellum cautiously. Each sheet costs more than a month's oat ration. The children gather cross-legged. Thralls hover near doorposts. Your wife settles with spindle spinning. You read in measured cadence, letting your tongue linger over alliteration. Bold was Halfdan as basalt cliffs, black his hair as midnight coals. The story flows. Royal feasts, ice crossings, a fatal sled crash recounted with gentle detail. When a scene ends with Halfdan resting under the northern lights, you lower your voice, letting the hush settle. A hush is a gift on winter nights, as nourishing as stew. Adults exchange glances. They feel it too, the moment when everyone inhales in unison and the room tilts toward dream. You fold the scroll, tuck it safe, then dim lanterns until only one tallow taper flickers. It throws long shadows on the roof beams, like rooks stretching their wings. Your mother clears her throat and begins a lullaby in Old Norse. It sways, full of minor notes and trills, telling of sea maidens who trade lullabies for pearls. Children lean against each other, eyelids drooping. You listen, letting the melody seep into bones. When the last note fades, you shepherd little ones to their sleeping pallets, layering furs, reindeer hide first, then coarse wool, then hareskin caps atop small ears. Good nights are whispered, some to Odin, some to Christ, some to unnamed household wights, and then silence reclaims the corners. Adults sit near a fire now, nursing small clay cups of honey wine diluted with warm water. Sipping, you feel the day's knots unwind in shoulders. Your wife asks about the sled runners. You tell her of their smoothness. She smiles, relief flickering. Smooth runners mean faster hauling come melt season, and that means more firewood stacked before blackfly swarms awake and daylight chores shift to pastures. You and thralls discuss upcoming lambing. The ewe's belly's already round, due perhaps 5 weeks from now. Hawk suggests soaking straw with rosemary infusion to ward off fleas in lambing pens, a trick he learned across the sea. You nod agreement. Rosemary ranks pricey, but a handful in boiling water scents straw enough, and might save a delicate newborn from misery. Such small interventions, each a thread that holds the tapestry. At last, yawns ripple. You bank the fire again, arranging 2 stout logs in a crisscross, edges charred to slow smoulder. Sparks leap up, brief meteors inside the chimney of smoke. One by one, adults drift to pallets. You slip beneath furs, mind pleasantly blank. A sigh escapes as head meets pillow, stuffed with duck down. For a heartbeat, you notice the faint florist shop note of dried meadowsweet sewn into the seam. Your wife's thoughtful touch, good for easing chest colds, and then, like a candle snuffed, you are asleep. Dreams. This time, a market square in high summer, colours riotous, saffron banners, turquoise glass, oxblood tunics, smells thick with roasting almonds and buttressed by the briny tang of fish scales under sun. You wander stalls, weighing scarlet silk, sampling quince honey, trading 1 fox pelt for a brass astrolabe. You hold the astrolabe high, watch brass plates spin, tracing invisible star tracks above. You realize, in dream logic, that the little instrument understands not only celestial skies, but hidden maps of the heart. You turn a wheel, and lines converge on a tiny dot marking home. Somewhere behind you, a trader calls out, "Even a farmer may steer by the stars," and the phrase folds into your memory like a pressed flower. Dawn edges grey again. Another day. The pattern repeats, and yet each repetition feels like a new verse in an epic poem. Same meter, fresh nuance. Today, you and your eldest will shape wooden hoops for a new butter churn. Cows soon yield spring milk, and churns must stand ready. Butter commands high trade value, especially at monasteries where Lenten fast forbids meat, but allows dairy indulgences. A sturdy churn may tip the scales between meagre and comfortable. You fetch willow wands and soak them in a steaming trough to soften. Steam ribbons rise, carrying a sweet earth smell. You bend the wands round a cedar form, fingers warming, nails biting bark. The hoops will dry overnight, set like frozen rivers, but flexible enough to bear hammering. You teach your son the lashing knot. 2 loops, pull tight, twist, tuck, until his small hands manage dexterity. Knot knowledge, like prayer, passes from generations unseen. Mid-morning arrives with the jingle of a distant bell. A travelling peddler, rare visitor at this season. You and the thrall step onto the path as the man approaches, breathing clouds. He leads a donkey stumpier than any Icelandic pony, panniers bulging with goods. He greets you in a mixture of Norse and Saxon, offers wares, bright glass beads from Frisia, a pewter icon of St. Olaf, dried figs from Miklagard. His price is high. He must account for risk, snow, bandits and frostbite, but his figs lure curiosity. Your wife eyes the beads, pale blue like glacier melt. She imagines them threaded in braids come midsummer. But figs offer rare vitamins. You recall sailors claiming figs stave off scurvy. After swift barter, 9 silver coins shaved from an arm ring, he leaves 3 handfuls of figs and a small bundle of southern saffron threads. Saffron, enough to tint half a cauldron of mead or flavour buns for Yule next winter. The beads you forego, beauty waits, nutrients cannot. The peddler stays for ale, shares rumours. King Harold's messenger will call for an extra tithe this year to fund his planned pilgrimage to Rome. Some jarls complain privately, but none dare voice opposition aloud. You file this away, plan to fatten a few hens for sale. Silver will be demanded. After a bowl of pea soup, the peddler trundles off, donkey bells fading. With sunshine, a meagre, cheery disk, overhead for fleeting minutes, you seize the chance to beat last week's laundry. Clothes freeze dry in winter air if timed. You carry tub, warm water sparingly, scrub linen with soapwort root, rinse in snow. Then garments hang on a pine rail outside. The wind snaps them into rigid shapes. Later, you'll bring them in, frozen stiff, Stand them near the fire, and they'll thaw to airy softness. Children laugh at tunics frozen in posture of invisible dancers. Afternoon, your son practices sayax handling. You watch hawk-eyed guiding angle, wrist loose, elbow steady, cut away from body. A slip costs flesh. Norse law states, if a child wounds himself through poor tutelage, blame rests partly on teacher. Compensation values half a goat. You keep guard, nodding approval each correct slice through practice branch. Your daughter combs goat hair, teasing curls into soft floss. Goat hair, blended with sheep wool, produces a yarn warm yet lighter than pure wool. She sings a tune learned from the thrall. Melody lilts in Slavic minor scale. Your mother recognizes the sadness, hums harmony. Cultures intertwine. As dusk creeps, you pack a basket with dried herbs, meadowsweet, yarrow, juniper, to visit the neighbor whose cough lingers. Community again. You trek across field, snow creaking. Neighbor's longhouse sits dim. Inside, wife tends to husband fevered, cheeks flushed. You inspect, pulse fast, eyes glassy. You brew yarrow infusion, instruct doses, 3 sips every hour, honey if available. In return, neighbor gifts 2 raven feathers, believed to ward off nightmares when placed beneath pillow. You accept graciously. Sleep free of dread is as valuable as silver. Back home, you stew rye grains with those figs, saffron, goat milk. The aroma, sweet, exotic, golden, floats through beams. Family gathers bowls, spooning, eyes widening as flavor bursts. Sunshine in winter, warmth of distant climates captured. Children exclaim, you add knowledge. A single pinch of saffron in Baghdad fetches price of small sheep. Your spoon today cost perhaps that, but memories feed longer than coin. Night deepens. You sit on bench, cleaning the brass astrolabe from your dream. Except this one is real. A modest bronze quadrant inherited from your own grandfather, used not for sea, but for mythology. You polish it, show children how stars align. They gasp as pointer finds North Star through smoke hole. Even the thralls stop, marvel. Sky in this latitude is classroom without ceiling. At last, it is time to wind the lamp for final hours. You pour fish oil, trim moss wick, adjust cover so flame whispers rather than roars. Shadows lengthen. Each object acquires a nimbus. You speak softly, voice syrup thick. The world is vast, but our hearth is whole. Sleep, and be certain the sun returns. Your wife squeezes your hand. The outro arrives unannounced, woven into the very act of lying down. You ease under furs, heart rate falling. You remind yourself, and any sleepy traveler listening, that no matter how long the winter night, warmth persists in memory, in community, in simple wooden spoons and stories flung across generations. You speak aloud, but just above a whisper, the final blessing of your household. Fires banked, worries quieted, dreams take wing. The words drift upward, brush the rafters, and vanish like smoke into the vast hush of night. You feel the weight of the day lift, the breath slow, the eyelids heavy. Beyond the walls, the wind hums a lullaby older than language, curling around the longhouse with tender insistence. Snowflakes tap the roof like fingers on a drum, steady and soft, a natural heartbeat. Inside, embers glow, dog sighs, children murmur in dreams. And so, dear traveller, let the darkness fold around you like the gentlest cloak. Trust the cadence of history to rock you. Trust the pod of quiet facts tucked through the tale, prices and punishments and prayers to anchor you. Trust the comical goat sneeze, the twirl of wool, the crackle of alder, to remind you that life, though often cold, is densely threaded with kindness. Drift now, as the Vikings do, on currents of myth and mind, where each breath sails you farther from worry and deeper into peace. Good night. May your mind find fields of blooming saffron, even under blankets of snow. and may tomorrow greet you with the soft pink of Arctic dawn, gentle and unhurried, lighting the path back to a warming hearth and the next quiet chapter of your story.